Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman, who will join us in just a moment, has led more than 65 congressional Democrats in sending a letter asking what steps the Department of Homeland Security has taken to weed out domestic extremism within its own ranks, after reports concluded that more than 300 current or former DHS employees were members of the right-wing Oath Keepers group as of 2015, and Customs and Border Protection staff were working with conservative militia groups along the U.S.-Mexico border. Last March, the department itself released a report admitting there are, quote, significant gaps which have impacted its ability to comprehensively prevent, detect, and respond to threats of domestic violent extremism within the DHS. In the wake of multiple trials over the January 6th insurrection, members of Congress expressed their concern about what, if any, preventative measures Homeland Security has taken to ensure that people devoted to the overthrow of the United States government are not also its employees. The members want a detailed response from DHS by tomorrow, July 31st. Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman of New York joins me now. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. So this letter comes more than 2 years after Secretary Mayorkas launched that internal review. In the meantime, you've had this report that revealed the number of Oath Keeper members within DHS ranks, but that figure, believe it or not, was actually from 2015. We don't have an updated number about what it is, but the urgency is obviously still there. What's at risk if DHS drags its heels on this subject?
Well, the urgency, of course, has increased dramatically after January 6th, when members of the Oath Keepers and other domestic violent extremist groups tried to overthrow the government effectively. So the risk here, of course, is that the Department of Homeland Security is charged with keeping our homeland safe. And if there are domestic violent extremists within their ranks, that, of course, runs counter to their mission and could completely undermine their mission. So it's been 2 years, which is part of the reason why we followed up with yet another letter, because we appreciate the fact that the department has recognized that there are gaps here, but those gaps need to be filled. And we need to understand that there is a methodical and comprehensive process to determine whether or not there are employees of the Department of Homeland Security who have connections, ties, allegiances to domestic violent extremist groups.
How do you square or reconcile the First Amendment right to have these views and beliefs as opposed to the potential threat? I mean, the Senate just passed the annual defense bill that approved $886 billion over the next year that covers the cost of tracking terrorism abroad. But in its own report, the Department of Homeland Security admits that, quote, it had no official definition of or guidance about what constitutes a violent extremist, no workforce training to identify and report extremist activity, and insufficient funding for the already existing DHS insider threat program.
Yeah, look, the First Amendment concerns are real. The question, of course, becomes, first of all, are personal opinions being used in furtherance of professional activities? And second of all, are those personal views actually protected by the First Amendment? I know my Republican colleagues seem to now think that if you utter anything, that's protected free speech under the First Amendment. That is, of course, not the case. And so there has to be an evaluation of whether or not, A, it would be potentially protected speech, but more importantly, whether it is infiltrating any actual professional or career duties that any employees of the department are doing. But you also raise, I think, really important points. Do they need more funding? Do we need to establish by statute a definition of a domestic terrorist? That is that's been open for debate for quite some time. And now that we have FBI Director Christopher Wray confirming multiple times in public hearings that the #1 threat to our national security is domestic violent extremism, well, if that's the case, then we need a whole of government approach to weed that out. And we've seen the impact and effect of that through the Department of Justice's prosecutions against domestic violent extremists who executed the January 6th overthrow.
We have a foreign terrorist organization list at the State Department. Should we have a domestic terrorist organization list here internally through DHS? I mean, what are your thoughts on how the DHS should approach the point that you just raised, this growing threat of extremism?
Look, it's something we have to evaluate and analyze very closely, especially now that we've had a number of defendants convicted for seditious conspiracy. That is a charge so rarely brought in our history, and we've now had, I believe, almost double-digit defendants from a variety of domestic violent extremist groups who've been convicted of that. So if it is truly the number one threat, and if this is something that we are even seeing infiltrating our national security, our homeland security, then we need to more aggressively root it out. And we're going to have to balance it with the First Amendment. We all understand that. But we are going to also need to make sure that our homeland is secure and safe, and that we don't have domestic violent extremists in our midst, either perpetrating crimes as they did on January 6th, or perhaps undermining the duties and responsibilities of our custom and border officials.
Let me switch gears and get your thoughts on, Congressman, on the special counsel Jack Smith. And we could see him hit Donald Trump with an indictment for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. How does that tie this back to what we've been talking about and the growing threat of domestic extremism? I mean, what will you be watching for as we await these possible charges?
Well, there's obvious overlap, given all of the convictions we've had of avowed domestic extremists for their efforts to invade the Capitol and prevent the lawful functioning of government and effectively to overturn and overthrow the government. So it will be interesting to see what, if any, charges are brought against Donald Trump and what connections the special counsel, if any, is able to make with these domestic violent extremist groups. We all remember when Donald Trump said at the debate to the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, and that was perceived by them to be a clear message. And it's one thing if you do it one time and you may not understand that it will have that impact, but Donald Trump does it repeatedly. So he knows what impact it will have. And then the question becomes whether there were more unknown communications or coordination with these domestic violent extremist groups. But that is certainly something I will be looking for.
Congressman Dan Goldman of New York, it's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Eamon.